Here in 15.2, the new specificity we have is the idea of a protected member. Now, for the first blush of this, what to know about protected access means that, as you see here on page 917, in the very first block we have is protected members of a base class are like private members, but they can be accessed by the derived class. So what that means is, here at the top of your hierarchy chart, we have a base class, and we declare something as protected as opposed to private or as opposed to public. What protected means is that the classes we derive from it do have access to that protected member. But what it does is it removes access from things like friend classes if we don't specify them there. So we are creating a a business need there. We are saying that only classes that derive from our base class have access to certain things. Even if we want to extend that functionality out someplace else, we would have to address the idea of what functions or what members are available there. So in practice, this honestly, for as far as the academic necessity of what we'll do here in class, for the most part, you will, as we see here on page, it is 918, and of the contents of final exam.h, it is line number 5. So class final exam public graded activity. What we are doing is let's go from the right-hand side of our colon back over to the left. Public graded activity is going to set the access that we have to the private and to the public data members contained in our base class, and our base class is graded activity. From there, we have to know the other side, that class final exam. So that is the new class that we are creating, which is going to be a type public of graded activity. Really the place that this comes into play, and again, this is not for any of the function that you'll create for, the end of chapter activities here, but it is something you do need to know about how it is that you can declare your derived classes. And if we scroll all the way, I know it's not necessarily scrolling if you've got a book, it's flipping. But it is flipping all the way down to table 15.1, and figure 15-3 is the idea of we can change that access specifier from public to protected to private. And each one of those changes is going to have a substantive impact on what the derived class has access to from the general class, the base class. So when we declared, and we'll start here at the bottom of table 15-1, when we declared final exam was public graded activity, the private members of the base class are inaccessible to the derived class. Now, go back up and take a look, but there are no private members of the base class. So, for example, if we had a private count, for example, that would be inaccessible to so if we had a count of graded activities, that would be inaccessible to our final exam, but it is something that we could use as if it was a static member of that class. Protected members of the base class become protected in the derived class, and public members of the base class become public in the derived class. Now, if we were to declare, so change all the way back on line number 5 of graded or final exam.h, if we said, as a new final exam, protected graded activity, the private members of the base class are still inaccessible to the derived class. That's going to be true all the way down through here. The protected members of the base class, so that's up on your hierarchy chart, become protected members of the derived class. So the protected remain protected, and the public are, instead of public members of the derived class, are, in this case, protected members of the derived class. And just to make this terrible in English one more time, if we declare a private member of the base class, the private members are inaccessible, the protected members become private, and the public members become private. What this enables us essentially to do, and again, we will not display this idea in the homework, so this is one of those things you should, put back there in the file cabinet and let ruminate until you see it again. Is what we're doing is creating an environment where we as developers control what has access to what functions, what has access to what data, so that we do not get inconsistencies in the way that our programs are run, where all of a sudden we didn't know that we had, a class derived from a class derived from a class derived from a class. Later on, it's called polymorphism. And we can help ensure that we reduce the numbers of unintended consequences of a long run of a program, where, it is better to restrict access to a member's functions and a member's variables than it is to simply have open access there. So you will not be demonstrating 15-2 protected members and class access for the most part, but it's one of those things that is very, very important to know moving forward.